Welcome into the Unnamed Fantasy Football Show as we're heading into Week 10 of the season. Lisa Matthews here with you, Zach Galia, Kyle Odegard, and Felipe Corral. Now, it feels like it's been a minute, guys, since obviously we've had the show. It was Thursday Night Football for us on a Thursday. And so, how are you guys doing? How's your teams doing? Surviving or thriving?
I feel like the YouTube crowd missed us last week.
Tons.
Everybody's probably clicking on our page.
They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what players to play.
They all lost because we didn't give them good advice.
Yeah. They're trying to figure out if Kyle won, things like that.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we will.
You know what? Let's just go straight to that. Let's look at the scoreboard because you need some time to relish in this moment. First up, let's talk about this. Jones, Suggs, and Harmony loss here. 3 points. So close.
Yeah, just I think a couple poor management decisions on my part.
You usually do your homework.
I know.
I'm disappointed in you.
Yeah, we had, I think I had 3 guys playing on Thursday Night Football, and I think Zane was my highest scorer. No surprise because he's the best. But I think I only had 9 or 10 points between the 3 of them. So I needed Amari Cooper to struggle on Monday Night Football. He did not, and now I'm 7-2.
All right, let's go to Jake's Plumber. Dun dun dun. That's my victory song. Dun,
I like
dun,
it.
Dun.
Yeah, I mean, I dominated Felipe. Wasn't close. Everybody knew it was going to be a blowout the entire time. The records were deceiving. Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett came up huge. I mean, my team's coming together. You might see 2-7 on the standings, but this is a fantasy
moment.
Juggernaut for sure.
You have an ISO cam and everything. Live in
Fantasy
this moment.
juggernaut.
Live in this moment, Kyle. Now, what happened with you, Felipe?
It was just one of those moments where I saw this matchup ahead of time, and I'm like, shoot, I have to face Kyle this week. And we're talking behind closed doors, and he was like, man, my team's stacked. And I'm like, bro, you only won 2 games. But what happens.
Record.
We all lose.
It happens. You had Christian McCaffrey, and so you would think you would have gotten a little bit more than 110 points. It's fine, though.
Yeah, you'd think so.
New week ahead.
It's just one of those things where, man, it sucks when you have someone like CMC on your lineup and then you still get blown out by a stacked lineup.
That doesn't happen often, though.
Right.
Look at your record there. Well, hopefully making the comeback. We all go to the playoffs, I found out, so we have that to live for.
It's true.
All right. Well, I got the win, guys. 2 points. Barely got the win there.
Barn burner.
It went down to Monday Night Football. Zeke Elliott. I was batting my nails. I was saying a prayer. At first, there was no points scored at all, just on all fantasy levels for a Monday Night Showdown. And then, boom, got the win over MJ there. So I'm happy about that. 2 spoons. I think this is his 4th win in a row. So he's making a comeback. Yeah.
I remember he started 0-3 or something, 0-4 or something. And it's just
I know.
Yeah, 0-4.
I need to see what he's sipping on over there.
Yeah, he's not messing around.
He's not messing around. Well, let's look at the top 10 players of Week 9. And leading the way is your guy, Kyle, Tyler Lockett, 40 points. Had a huge game for the Seahawks, a total of 152 total yards, 13 catches, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, he's a super talented player, and sometimes the volume isn't there. Like, the Seahawks will run a decent amount and sometimes not throw to him, even though he's their clearly best receiver. But in this game, it was a shootout against the Bucs, and Russell Wilson found him a bunch. Tyler Lockett, I mean, he's turned into a star in this league, and luckily I was able to grab him, and now he's probably going to lead me to the title, I'm guessing.
Yes, and you wouldn't let go of him as I tried to trade for him earlier in the season, but understood. Now the guy throwing the ball to him, Russell Wilson, finished with 387 passing yards through 5 touchdowns in that OT.
That was a really good pick for you. You probably got him in the middle rounds, huh?
Yeah, I sure did. He's had a great year. Yeah. MVP caliber season overall for Russell Wilson. Mike Evans, let's go down to him because he's someone that the Cardinals are going to see this week. Obviously, someone to have our eye on. They have their hands full against this guy. The last 2 games, 378 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, he started a little bit slowly this year. He's picked it up. Like you said, it's an interesting matchup. Patrick Peterson did not play very well against Emmanuel Sanders, and if he matches up consistently against Mike Evans, how does Patrick Peterson do in that matchup? They're going to throw it to him. I mean, Bruce Arians isn't going to shy away from anybody because that's his MO. He's going to throw to his best players no matter who's guarding them. And, I mean, Mike Evans against Patrick Peterson, they've matched up a pretty decent amount of times in their career, and Patrick's done a really nice job against him. So that'll be interesting. And if you're a Mike Evans owner like I am, you have to decide whether to play him. But he's been so good, and the volume is there that they throw it down the field so much that even if Patrick wins the majority of those battles, Mike Evans still might put up decent numbers.
Yeah, so you have to play him.
I think so, yeah.
You're playing him, Kyle.
I'm playing him. Don't listen to that, Patrick.
Yeah, a guy like Patrick, though, you would have to assume a great player like him, he's not going to have those back-to-back games where we saw last week. It's not going to hopefully turn over into week 10.
Yeah, you expect him to bounce back. We'll see how it goes.
And with both of these offenses, I think you're going to see big weeks from Cardinals guys on offense and Bucks guys on offense, and I think it's going to be a relatively high-scoring game.
If the top two scorers of fantasy last week were Seahawks players and they were playing against the Bucks,
it's going to be a shootout. Well, Zach, you have some hot starts for this week.
Yeah, there's a lot of injuries going through. Oh, that's a nice graphic. A lot of injuries coming through, and I think one to kind of keep an eye on is a lot of people with Evan Ingram in their lineups, him not playing this Sunday. Kind of coincides with another injury with T.O.I. Hilton, not expected to play this week. So kind of looking at the Jack Doyle, Eric Ebron pairing as kind of my hot start. I think Jack Doyle's more of the safer choice. He's had 10 points 2 weeks ago, 11 points last week with a touchdown against the Steelers. And then Eric Ebron, I think, is more of the threat and I think more of the talent between the two. But I think if it's me, I might take Ebron, but I think it's more of a boom or bust. You may get 8, 9, 10 points from Doyle, but with Ebron, you have the chance that maybe he gets, a few touchdowns, a couple touchdowns, something like that.
And they play the Dolphins, so and Jacoby Brissett might be out with that MCL sprain. So, there's a couple of tough decisions you might have to make there. So.
Zach with the hot starts. All right, well, let's go back to the weekly top 10 list. Let's go down to that Cardinal there, that new Cardinal, Kenyan Drake, 28 points. Now, we saw him rush for 110 yards and a touchdown, led the team with 4 receptions, 52 yards. For coming in on short notice, the way that he performed, guys, obviously a lot of people are picking him up after he left the Dolphins and then came to the Cardinals knowing that there were some injuries in the running backs room. But this week will be interesting because, dun-dun-dun, I'm all about the music segues today. David Johnson will be back for the Cardinals. So this is a situation for a lot of fantasy owners. What do they do here?
You've seen the 49ers with Matt Breida and Tevin Coleman. I think both of those guys are fantasy plays. In Los Angeles, Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon, people are riding with both of them. And especially this week, when you look at, like Zach was saying, the Buccaneers and the Cardinals, both offenses are ahead of the defenses. Maybe we'll see some points. I think there's plenty of touches to go around for both of those backs personally. So whether you have Drake, whether you have David Johnson, if I had either of them, I'd be playing them.
And I hate to be the pessimistic one here, but
you usually are.
And I mean this in the best way possible. Okay. I don't have that much faith in Kenyan Drake this Sunday because he had 1 touch inside the 25-yard line against the 49ers, but in his career, he's had 6 touches inside the 5-yard line. So, you figured with David Johnson coming back, he's going to get those touches, those goal line touches. So, maybe if you're a Cardinals fan, start him as a flex. But personally, I'm not telling anyone what to do, but I wouldn't start him.
Oh, man, glass half empty. All right, well, I'm going to tell you what to do, and I would play both of them.
Yeah.
I think with the way the game's going to go and just the high-scoring possibilities of this game, even Coach Kingsbury said we're a better team with both guys on the field. So I think both will have enough touches. They might eat into each other a little bit, but I still think both warrant starting, especially with some of the bye weeks that are out there too.
That goal line thing is interesting that you brought up. Is David Johnson the main back inside the 5 because he's probably a little bit bigger and he's very good inside the 5, inside the 10, or do they mix it up? And definitely something to watch in this game now that you have both of them and you figure these will be the duo kind of the rest of the season. Chase Edmonds is still hurt and trying to get back in that mix, but how it plays out, I think Cliff Kingsbury is varied enough where he's not just going to stick to one guy in a certain situation. I think it depends on a lot of factors, and I could see either of them getting goal line work personally.
It always feels good when, I wake up, I come to the studio and Kyle compliments me on a stat, I'm just like, I'm doing something
You're
right.
doing
I'm
something
doing
right.
something right. Yeah, okay.
Hey,
be a good day.
to me, it's going to be a good day. To me, both can coexist. I don't like the chatter of, oh, who's going to get more touches or they're going to ride with the hot hand. I mean, both have the skill set in the run game and the passing game too. So both will be utilized and can coexist in this offense. I believe it'll be interesting to see how that turns out come Sunday. Well, let's take a look at the Cardinals' top 10 list and how they fared in Week 9. Kenyan Drake, as we talked about, top of the leaderboard. Kyler Murray, 23 points for him. Are you guys thinking higher or lower this week?
That's a pretty good score, but I'm still going higher.
I think higher as well. You know, Tampa Bay, Todd Bowles, they came in with high hopes. Obviously, this defense hasn't turned out to their expectations this year. So, but again, I think it's going to be a shootout.
Yeah, I think, honestly, the Buccaneers' rushing defense is a lot better than their passing defense, which might limit kind of Kenyan Drake and DJ on the ground, but both of them can catch and have shown kind of their skills in the receiving game. But I think having a quarterback who can run and kind of take those broken plays and make something crazy out of them, I just think kind of the sky's the limit for Kyler in fantasy this week.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, his last 5 games, he's really turned it on, and some of them fantasy-wise haven't been fantastic. Like in the rain in New York, he wasn't great, but overall he's been very consistent. He's not turning the ball over. He's keeping the team in games, and if the Cardinals' pass defense has been poor this year, so if the Bucs move the ball and score touchdowns through the air, the Cardinals are going to have to match that. And that's why I think, like, from a volume perspective, he's going to throw it a decent amount, score some touchdowns. Like you said, if he breaks off some long runs, really high potential for Kyler Murray this week.
Yeah, good opportunity. This defense is giving up tons of points. They're on pace to give up at least 50 touchdowns this season.
Wow.
Andy Isabella, 15.8 points, had that 88-yard catch and run we saw near the end of the game. It was great to see him just show off his speed, what he can do. However, on the fantasy side of things, I don't believe there's going to be an uptick in his reps, offensive snaps per game. Even Cliff Kingsbury noted that this week. Yes, he had that huge play, but it doesn't mean he's going to get more of it just because he's still developing. He's still a rookie working on his hands and route running. So as for fantasy, I don't see you rushing to, yes, maybe pick him up as a flex option possibly or someone on your bench to stash away. But, yeah, I just don't see him getting the reps and volume going forward for this offense.
Yeah, I would say he's the absolute definition of boom or bust. Like you're going to get maybe a catch or two that could go for 90 yards or you're going to get nothing. Yeah. So
with a lot of people on looking at their buy and, trying to pick up some flashy quick, showed the ability of 88 yards and picked up 15 points last week. I don't know. I
mean, I wouldn't be surprised because, 79% of the Bucs' fantasy points this year have been through the air. So quarterbacks, Kyler Murray's going to spread the wealth, as we like to say. So, I mean, don't be surprised if, Andy Isabella is another hero this week. I mean, there's a lot of balls to be thrown in this matchup. And, in a deeper league, like you said, you might start him as a flex. But, just don't be surprised. Don't blame us. Oh, you told us not to start him.
I'm not saying that.
And you just look at the number of snaps he's getting. He had the big catch and huge for the Cardinals, and if anybody did play him in a super deep league last week, they're over the moon with what happened. But I think he only had 10 or 12 snaps, something like that. And like you said, Lisa, Cliff Kingsbury said it's not likely to go up a huge amount because of that play. I think they're still working him in. And to me, you look at Christian Kirk in this game and you say that's the guy that's getting the targets. The touchdowns haven't been there, and he's been hurt, so it hasn't been a great season for Christian Kirk yet. But we've seen the way he plays and the way he moves. I think he's the most electric receiver on this team, and I think he could have a very big game.
Yeah, Christian Kirk just 3.6 points. Again, and it comes down to at that point, going forward, he's going to have more touches. I mean, we know that Kyler Murray likes to throw the ball to him. We've seen a lack of touchdowns this season. Again, he was out for quite some time. So he's not someone to panic and, stash away on your bench or even trade or something. Keep playing him, especially this week.
Yeah, I think if there's ever a game where you're going to see a Christian Kirk breakout, it would be this weekend in Tampa. I just think with his skill set and kind of the routes he runs and the chemistry he has with Kyler, I think, it wouldn't be unrealistic to say Christian has, 10 plus catches, 120 plus yards and a touchdown or two.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if I have Christian Kirk, I'm playing him without hesitation.
Keyshawn Johnson, 10 points. He got his first NFL touchdown. Good for him. Again, I feel like there's so many guys to throw the ball to at this point. We saw Demir Bird inactive last week, and he was a guy that was starting earlier this season along with Keyshawn Johnson. So, this is interesting. Again, we'll see how it kind of plays out going forward. I don't think he's a starter in your fantasy league, but good to see him get that touchdown and hopefully going forward more opportunities.
I mean, we got to give these rookies a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
The Bucs have given up the fourth most fantasy football points to perimeter receivers. So I think, Keyshawn Johnson's a little bit interesting. Again, we're talking deeper fantasy leagues.
Deeper.
Fantasy leagues.
If I'm playing Isabella or Keyshawn, I'm probably going Keyshawn.
Yeah.
And then going back to the Christian Kirk, nope. The Bucs also have given up the second most fantasy football points to slot receivers. But my question is to Kyle, because the Cardinals have cut down a lot of those 4 wide receiver sets. Does that have a effect on people like Christian Kirk, and how?
I don't think on Christian, because he's going to still be out there every snap basically, and they're still playing a decent amount of 3 wide receiver looks. I think to me the more thing that affects him and any receiver is how much they're starting to run the ball now. We thought this was going to be 4 wide, chuck it all around the yard, and I think once they started averaging 5 yards a carry consistently, Cliff Kingsbury realized, hey, I need to run the ball because this is the most efficient way to move it, and he plays off that, and they still throw a decent amount. But I think when you talk about the Keyshawn Johnsons, the Trent Sherfields, the Andy Isabellas, that's who gets affected by not being really fantasy reliant. I still think Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald are 2 guys you can count on moving forward.
Well, even Larry's production has gone down in the last 3 weeks. I think 20 yards on 3 grabs. So that's someone who fantasy owners are looking at. They're used to more production and just 7.8 points last week.
That's probably the toughest play, where it doesn't feel like Keyshawn or Isabella are fantasy relevant yet. Kirk, Drake, and David Johnson, I think, are. Fitz is the one, depending on matchup, week by week. Do you play him?
It's definitely a matchup, I believe, too. But you always start a Hall of Famer, I think,
right?
That's my hot start for the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
against BA?
He's lined up in the slot 92% of the offensive snaps. So, given what the stats, the points that Buccaneers secondary has given up to the slot receivers, it's a good hot start, in my opinion.
We'd love to see him have a big game against
another compliment.
I could see a touchdown for him in this game.
Definitely. Especially against BA. You got him that Corvette. I was reading. And so this is his way of saying, okay, I got you the Corvette. Give me a touchdown.
Give me a touchdown. All right. This Arizona Cardinals defense obviously didn't have the best, I would say, last drive against the 49ers, allowing them to stay on the field. But overall, they stopped the run immensely, but we know that this Bucs team is going to put some points. So this is intriguing, but they do turn the ball over. So it's like, okay, are they going to get enough pressure up front with Chandler Jones and Suggs, Winston? He's turnover prone. Could this be a good play this week? I don't know. They put up so many points.
Talk about boom or bust again.
Yeah,
I know,
it is. It's a risky start if you do make the choice. We all would love to see the Cardinals shut down Jameis Winston and stop the scoring, obviously, and turn over some ball. Put a big,
Sorry. I love this defense. It's close to my heart because I work here, but I ain't starting them. I'm sorry.
It'd be really risky. But
so we got a question from one of our viewers, and it's more of a futuristic question than what's happening right now. But what will happen to the backfield reps when Chase Edmonds finally returns?
That will be interesting.
Yeah, it's tough because you're still looking at a couple weeks away, most likely. He's not playing this week, and when Cliff Kingsbury rules somebody out that quickly, it probably means it's a decently significant injury. So we'll see once he gets back, but knowing that David Johnson is your star running back, and with the way Kenyan Drake looked, it feels like maybe Chase Edmonds gets squeezed a little bit, and those are your top 2. But we'll know in a few weeks. If Kenyan Drake keeps up what he did in that first game, you're not taking snaps away from him. But if that was a good game, then he comes back down to earth a little bit. Maybe you mix and match everybody. And if you're talking about 3 running backs, that's not good news for fantasy owners. But it's rare to play 3. I think, to me, David Johnson and Kenyan Drake at this point would be ahead of Chase Edmonds.
And I think a lot will ride on what happens this weekend too, right? Like you'll see kind of the first time share of David Johnson and Kenyan Drake, and maybe it's much different than we think it's going to be. So, I mean, Chase Edmonds was crushing it before he went out. So I think having 3 solid running backs is a good problem to have in the NFL.
Good for the team.
But not
more
necessarily.
Weapons, the more problems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in fantasy, that just makes the decision all that more tough.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Just a lot of comments.
Yeah, just really more comments.
Great stuff, guys.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you all for joining. Be sure to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching the Unnamed Fantasy Football Show. We'll see you next week.